Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the town board meeting for July 27th, 2022 to order at 6:30 p.m. As a reminder to everybody who's here, we do our meetings in a hybrid situation where we've got Zoom running. We've got people that are tuned in via Zoom. We're streaming to Facebook and YouTube. And we also have folks here in person to join us for this meeting. If anyone is interested in joining us via Zoom to participate, the instructions are always at the first item on our agenda, and there'll be a Zoom link in that PDF. So next up, I'd like to ask Councillor Nicholson to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so next up, we're going to have open podium. We got one person signed up, Craig Dutzak.
This is a microphone, so sort of talk at that.
Yeah, those are, you're talking to those guys.
The glowing owl stick.
He'll cut you.
Thank you. My name is Craig Dutzak. I'm a 36-year resident of Manlius, 33 in the village of Manlius, and last 3 in the town. I've come here today. I live at 8004 Summerview Drive, and that's up in Changing Seasons neighborhood. I come here today in representation of the Changing Seasons community. It's come to our attention that the petition that has been submitted by Kinsella is of interest to our community because of a former agreement that was signed between Kinsella and Changing Seasons Homeowners Association. So we're going to ask for you, as you move forward with their petition, to keep into consideration that agreement. We have previously submitted a digital copy to John here, and I also have a presentation to the board, a hard copy along with cover letter.
Thank you.
You received that. When considering the petition, we'd ask you to acknowledge this agreement and forward the agreement to whatever appropriate boards are taking it into consideration. So the planning committee or the planning board, as well as any other entity that might have some review of the petition. And then to keep us informed of it as it proceeds through its various steps, and obviously to communicate to us what its status is, such as public hearings or any other kinds of public commentary that might be appropriate. We think in our reading of the agreement that it constrains the Kinsella company from expanding footprint that it is currently operating under. But again, that's something that in submission to you, we'd ask you to look at, obviously legally, in terms of whatever someone who is appropriate to seeing what the boundary lines are and so on. And again, our reading of the agreement and its statement in plain language is that Kinsella had agreed not to expand beyond an existing 28.737 acres, and we believe that the petition they are offering will extend beyond that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just,
Yeah.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
So thank you for providing this information. The settlement agreement refers to several exhibits. And I'm looking at these exhibits, and I looked at it earlier today. And
Some of them are faint.
yes, you can't see the hatch marks. Do you have any?
I do
Better.
I don't have it with me, but I do have additional documents that are the exhibits in enlarged form.
Okay.
And if I can provide them to you at your convenience, we could copy them. or
Okay,
whatever is
yeah.
appropriate.
That would be great. If you just bring them to town hall, then we'll copy them right here.
Yeah,
But
they're
like
large.
this exhibit, it doesn't I can't see. Yeah, I can see it, but I can't see the.
Yeah. That would be great. Thank you.
That would be very helpful.
And also, Mr. Dursick and all of the neighbors, if you go to the town and you sign up for what they call to get if you sign up for notifications, you will get agendas for the planning board and anything, so that it's a way for you to, we will also reach out when there's a public hearing, but I just wanted you to know you can always keep track of that.
Well, that's how we knew about.
Yeah.
But
Perfect.
yes, thank you.
And I'll make sure that we stay in touch so that you're aware of where the project's at.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else here for open podium? Is anybody on Zoom joining us to speak at open podium? All you gotta do is hit the raise your hand button and our town clerk will promote you to speaker. Okay. Seeing no requests for open podium. We are going to shuffle this around a little bit. We have 2 applicants here, so we're just going to move item 4 to after item 6. So first up, we'll have the Twin Shores zone change application. And tonight we're going to have our, just due to this, I think each applicant has like 1 or 2 maps to show. We're just going to have the town clerk show those maps so we don't have to get everybody onto Zoom and everything like that.
Good evening. As you know, I represent Twin Shores Properties LLC, the applicant, in connection with the development of approximately 130 acres of land across North Burdick Street, which has often been referred to as the Fietta property. We are here tonight to ask the board to do 3 things. First, refer Twin Shores zone change application to the town planning board. Second, refer to the Onondaga County Planning Board software for the review. And lastly, adopt a resolution calling for a single public hearing on the proposed zone change to be held at the town board meeting of August 24th, 2022. This property has previously received a recommendation from the planning board and SACWA and was approved by this board on your February 23rd, 2022 meeting. The approval of the initial zone change application changed the property zoning from RA, R1, RM, and NS to RA and CA. We have worked through various site plans, and as those have all evolved, we've continued to modify our plans based on input from town officials, business interests, and community members. On July 11th, we appeared in front of the planning board to discuss a preliminary site plan for this project. The site plan included development of a residential multifamily housing in the RA zone and commercial development in the CA zone. Based on comments made by various members of the planning board and staff, we have decided that we should submit this zone change application. As indicated, a component of the initial site plan included development of multifamily units on part of the site presently zoned RA. Everyone agrees that the proper zone.
Total time 2 hours and 10 seconds. But they not do they?
Sorry about that.
Everyone agrees that the proper zone for this development and the proposed location be an R5 zoning designation. This is the reason for the modification of part of the present RA zone to an RA zone to an R5 zoning designation. This modification entails a minor eastward relocation of the CA boundary as well. So the CA boundary line, which will allow for the option of developing a municipal building on track 2 without extending the development over 2 different zones, and will also address setback requirements inherent in such development. So the first step in this process, just like the previous zone change, is a referral to the planning board and to SACWA. And second is asking for an adoption of resolutions tonight, making these referrals, as well as a resolution for a public hearing on the proposed zone change for your August 24th meeting.
Do we have any questions from the
I
board?
have a question. So in the original, in the proposal that you submitted during the winter.
Yep.
The area along Burdick Street was going to be commercial. This area here.
Yeah.
And now you've got the residential unit coming right up to the road. And we're wondering why you made that sort of adjustment in your mind to have the R5 come right up to Burdick Street instead of continuing the CA along the street line.
Wait, is this a big change right here?
Yes.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
This was CA right here. Sorry, it was.
Yeah.
CA.
Right.
And it changed it to R5.
Oh, well, part of the reason was because originally we thought maybe that part of that was gonna be used in conjunction with the town
Right.
going back here, but that's since changed.
I understand that, but in lieu of the town, it still seems like it would be appropriate for, shops or restaurants or something to be right on Burdick Street as opposed to homes.
I don't know if it's actually, yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah,
They have requested to consider putting residential on Burdick Street as part of our design.
okay,
So that's why we added it going all the way up, because the county recommended.
That was the SACRA
from
recommendation.
south.
Yes.
Because it seems to me that street is really sort of not very residential anymore.
Well, I don't think you're gonna see, you'll see the opening to what would be the residential units. You may have one smaller building there, with maybe some sort of clubhouse or some sort of
Yeah.
amenity that would support it,
Okay.
and then you would go back in. But we follow the recommendation that was made on
January 9th, they recommended that?
January 19th.
Any questions?
So Elaine was concerned about flooding and what the expansion and with the changing, what the plan would be for the water. And I know that that's come up several times
Yeah.
before.
None of that's changed, same as before.
So but would the footprint change or would we be expanding into areas where we had feedback from neighbors that it's flooded? Footprint's the same.
Another question is in the material submitted to the planning board, there was a sketch that incorporated building out land into the south pond.
Okay,
Is that still under consideration?
it could, yes, it could be, yeah.
So how do we zone for land that doesn't exist yet?
One of the original, if my recollection serves me correctly, one of the original proposals was to do exactly that, is to fill along the shoreline, create land. We would attach it to whatever the adjacent property would be. I don't know that we have to go through a process of.
Okay. It's just
I
if it's
think it-
there, it's
The
there.
parcel, it just kind of naturally.
I think that the code enforcement officer can make a determination as to what the zoning is on that, but I don't know whether, we'll have to look and see. I don't think it distinguishes between water
No,
and zoning, so it just says.
because the water
our-
zone now.
Yeah, the water is zoned, whatever it would be, so I don't think it's an issue.
Okay. Interesting. So that's something we talk about often when you're creating.
We don't, again, I'll have to look at the map, but we don't cut out water bodies from zoning. They're all zoned,
Whatever it is.
whatever the.
It looks like
zoning
the south
process.
pond is completely encased within that R5 parcel. So it wouldn't, you wouldn't be questioning.
Well, that was really my concern, because in the sketch that you're not using anymore, the CA continued into the pond. And this drawing does not have it doing that, so that's why I was curious about that. Do you
Well,
have
we
any
could-
comment about that?
Yeah, what we tried to do for the presentation was stick to the property line as it exists today.
Okay.
That's why you see it not go into the reclamation
Okay.
area. And at this point, I don't foresee us doing that.
And then you're also I sort of support the plan that you have as far as your subdivision, in that the commercial would stay one subdivision and then the RA would be a different subdivision. It looks like you're maybe making a third of sort of the useless one somewhere else.
Yeah, that's
The part in the back.
yeah, that'll be the conservation.
So I think in that sense, if it needed to be 3 versus 4, whatever, whatever you guys decide,
Sure.
but this is the right
Yeah,
strategy.
right, yeah. Thanks.
Is there a question?
I just want, we can certainly you want us to pass along your concerns through the minutes to the planning board as it relates to the CA, or are you good with the CA along,
Along Verdict Street. Yeah, I mean,
would you like them to look at
well,
that?
I think we're giving mixed messages. If the planning board, if the county planning board told them not to do it, and then we're telling them to do it, it's kind of hard for them to cooperate with that.
The county planning board doesn't do zoning in the town, man, that's we do something.
So I would like the planning board to consider that option.
Just at least look at it. Well,
We
and
could
I'll
also,
make,
we could also speak to SACPA and just sort of understand, was this that you were looking at a map, or do you really know the space? And we'd had the conversation in the zoning workshop
Mhm.
about traffic calming and all the rest. And if you want to make a transition from the housing that's at the corner up towards the canal along North Burdick, maybe adding more commercial right there
It was
doesn't
also,
make sense.
we're on the agenda, we are considering whether it's a mixed use overlay district or something like that. So there would be, assuming we eventually get to a point where we do have an overlay district for mixed use,
Yeah.
that would,
You could have shops downstairs.
yeah,
and
it would be an
truck
option to whoever develops that site, if they'd be interested in adding that commercial buffer with residential up top. But that's another
Another
option that I think, and you know, we would definitely have to consider the overlay district to work with R5.
Mhm.
But I think in this instance, you know, understanding the natural development of this area specifically, this would kind of be a prime spot for that kind of mixed use, if you're interested.
So I'll make a note to follow up with, to ask about SACPA, to ask SACPA what,
Mhm.
tell us more about what you, about that thought.
well, I'm reading it right now.
Oh, great.
Okay, the town should facilitate subdivision of lands to coincide with any future zoning changes in order to avoid difficulties with a split zone parcel. The town may also wish to consider potential multifamily residential uses for the front of the site rather than the interior. I don't know why, and the applicability of commercial zoning to accomplish any residential development goals.
And this is very much in line with the plans of SACPA to move towards a more mixed use type of development in this type of situation. So I think the change to R5, it definitely responds to that. And then I think by us coming up with a mixed use solution would dovetail, you guys have changed to high density residential. We might be interested in adding, whether it's adjusting a zone or adding an overlay district for that kind of mixed use situation. So I think the R5 zone change makes sense for now. And then in the future, there may be another option if it ends up that, putting a commercial front on that property makes more sense.
So Heather, if you want to speak to them, I think it's clear they had something in mind, but
Well, I've already,
Was it
We're not
Dan?
clear.
Yeah.
It was Dan?
Yeah.
And you spoke with Dan about
I
it?
already emailed Dan about the mixed use, so I'll talk to him about this and just make sure everything's in line.
That's great.
okay, great, thanks.
Thanks. We're just curious.
Yeah.
So can I make a motion to refer this to the planning board? I'd like to make a motion to refer this to the planning board.
I'll second.
All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
And we can wait to schedule the public hearing until we hear.
Well,
back
we
from-
can schedule it 2 weeks out and then or 2 meetings out. And then if it changes at the planning board for any reason, we can adjust the notice. And we'll just hold the notice until after the planning board meeting. Does that make sense?
Will it be enough time?
Yeah, so we're looking at August 24th, which is,
Yes, we'll have everything back. from
Yeah.
SACPA.
yeah, looking at deadlines, it makes sense that we'd have everything back by that.
6:35 PM?
Yes.
So I prepared the resolution, the local law just set the date for a public hearing, so we can just pass that.
Great.
And I just sent it to you.
All right, so,
Yeah, and then we're gonna.
Oh, SACPA referral.
so what's the next
So
motion?
the last things we have to do are set the public hearing, give a public hearing, and then refer to SACPA. So why don't I make a motion to refer the project to SACPA as presented today?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries.
And I'd like to make a motion to schedule the public hearing for 6:35 on the 24th of August.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries. I think that's it. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
The newspaper article was very exciting. It'd be nice to see something there besides the giant almond wraps.
We good?
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Okay. So, that notice will go out close to the public hearing, and we'll probably do a little outreach to let folks know that there's a big development happening here, and that, you know, if they're interested in making a comment, they can do that.
Hold them until after the town management plan.
Yeah, just in case they have a recommendation, that way we can modify the resolution and then just reschedule the public hearing. Okay, so next up, we have the zone change application for TH Kinsella for RA and NRRD to RA and NRRD.
Do you need to clarify what this is?
Oh, yeah, so, you know, we did have some questions from folks in the community. This application is for an expansion to the current Kinsella quarry. This is not an application for any proposed future quarry. So we're all.
Good evening, Tom Kinsella, President T.H. Kinsella, for those that don't know me. And I wasn't prepared for the stuff from the changing seasons. However, I've got some very detailed colored maps, exhibits you would be able to see that I guess it's, you know, colored, easy to read, and see, so.
Does that set forth the restrictions in the settlement agreement?
Well, you know, it shows the buffer lands, it shows the rezone, it shows the crosshead.
It'll give us exactly what we need.
Is this particular map that I chose here actually has, those red lines are the tax map parcels. So you can see those on this also, but I'll try and incorporate that as I go through my presentation here, but we're looking for zone changes stated from RA to natural resource removal, and it's roughly 12 acres, almost 13 acres adjacent to the quarry now. This blue area here is the area we're talking about. This particular map shows 11.8 acres, but I thought it was the best color because when we submitted this, it was only to the DEC and they did it from aerials. When the surveyor went out in the field and was, you know, did it in the field, he came up with this 12.967 acres from the original 11.8. That's why you see in some of the applications differentiation there. This 12 acres would be added to the current 188 acres that's already zoned natural resource removal. In the past, we've had 2 zone changes in the history of the quarry as a quarry from processing rock. You know, we mined by hand before 1967, but for the past 55 years, we've had 2 zone changes. The first one was in 1981, and that was when Allied Chemical came into the town of Manlius and the Jamesville quarry, and that's when the natural resource removal district was formed. And we got caught up in that even though our quarry was operating at the time. So in 1981, we had, I think it was 154 acres of the original quarry rezoned for mining. And then we came back in 1994 that dragged out to 2003 for that additional 29 acres that we're talking about. The original one was all the tax map parcels. If you follow the red line, the black line, I'm sorry, around it up further, shows the whole parcel of land. And the reason at the time was, you know, they rezoned the whole piece of land. And in 1991, there's some changes in the mining law that restricted the town with certain things. One of the, with what they could regulate in mining. And so one of the powerful things that the town has is zoning. So that's why they went from the original one for mining the whole, or from changing the zone of the whole parcel to only changing the mining footprint was for the town to have control. So that's why you see the difference with the maps there. So we're looking for this area now to try and hang on here for another 4 or 5 years. The top layer of our quarries are highest quality rock. You know, we have, you know, people always often ask me, how long do you have left? How long do you have left? Well, there's various layers that are good for different things. And anybody that's been up there, you can see you don't have to be a geologist to tell the quality of the stone. So without that top layer, it's like, it'd be like a grocery store without a meat department and a produce department. You know, we could go on for years selling sub base and for fill material and stuff like that, but the real quality is in the top layer of stone. That's why we're asking for this. Now, if you, but changing seasons is up in this upper left corner of the map. And if you can see there, that's the 600-foot buffer that we proposed to them in our settlement agreement, that they have, I think, 200 feet that they can use for recreational purposes. Then when the quarry's all done, we leave 100 feet of mining, and then that goes around 600 feet on the northwest corner of northwest corner of the property. Then this area here, if you notice this tax parcel and this one over here, this is 14 acres, which is the massive property and one of the exhibits in the settlement. This is the 54 acres that are in Rogers, that is part of the restrictive covenants that are in that exhibit there. This area here is not in that parcel in there. That's all this. If you look, this is the tax map, 14 acres. This is part of the other acres that are in there. So we don't feel that that's part of it in the exhibit and the descriptions that are in there, and you can look at the tax map parcels.
But what about the blue section?
The blue section isn't part of that. This is the crosshatch, the red crosshatch. I don't know. I wish I wasn't prepared.
No worries.
No, it's okay.
And this one here, and then up here there's a 600 feet that goes all around up in that area there. That is part of where they can hike and they can do it, and that's the 200 feet. They also refer to this parcel right up here, just south of theirs, which is north of Fayetteville. Just, I don't know, just in case we ever got that, we have restrictions on that also.
I'm talking about, I looked at some of the agreements today and I couldn't really figure out which parcels. But from here to here, is that in the protected area?
No, it's, if I could display
It's right
that map. We can get to that.
We're gonna have to take some time to take a quick look at it.
Yeah, for the board. But it's, like I said, this particular map, for the good thing, happens to show the
The tax map, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's gonna be the question is, the exhibit, does it outline including that parcel or not that parcel, or does it only refer to?
Well, there's three. I think there's a few things. Number one, that map that I passed around. The other things are the two parcels of property. This 14 acres, I think, is one of the exhibits, and this 54 acres is the other exhibit.
Now, you own those two?
Yeah, so in the middle of our last ordeal that lasted from 1994 to 2003, we acquired that. So we originally pulled back from the west to appease the neighbor at the time. Partway through our application, we bought the piece of property. And so, but we'd already put in our submittals for that area, and we pulled in from his. So now, mainly we are going, obviously west and a little south. We're going away from the changing season subdivision, nowhere near. The closest part was the 600 feet is up halfway up that line up there. I wish I could point it. Is where the closest is to changing seasons is the 600 feet. Right now, the majority of this, if you can see, is going to be moving away from the neighborhood, what we're doing. All this is occurring inside our current berms. From the outside, nobody would know anything that's going on. Our berms were built. Part of the reason our berms were built in the shape they are, if you can notice this, these are topographical lines here. And the berm, if we put it back in here, you would have looked right over the top of it. It would have been ineffective. So we pulled that berm out so that from a visual aspect, you couldn't see into the quarry. So that's why that is. And we put the other berm along the wood so it wasn't sticking out in the middle of the field. That's why the contours and the shapes of those berms. But what we're looking for is that 12 acres, 12.97 967 acres inside the berm, nothing outside the berm. We, like I said, we were looking for this quality rock to, continue for a little while we're working through our other proposal to the east here, and it gives us a little time to do that. Lots changed over the years too, with from the early 80s to now in terms of blasting and controls, and every blast that we do, obviously that's one of the major concerns of neighbors and stuff is monitored, reporting. We every complaint, everything is turned into the town, and so that's all there. So, and when we go into these areas, when you go, a blast is like 30 feet at a time. So you can monitor and see, are we having problems? Do we need to change anything? Is there an issue? It's not like you go and you just take and mine this whole area at one time. It's a little piece at a time. So therefore it can be monitored and make sure that we don't have to make changes to our blasting program or whatever it might be. Our processing plan, everything else, we don't propose to move anything. Like I said, from the outside looking in, no one will see any changes whatsoever. And as I was saying, before we pulled back in, when we did our expansion in 1994, we did an environmental impact statement on the whole area. And so, number one, it was done on this area. So we have an environmental impact statement that's already been done. And number two, everything that's in that impact statement, we can go back to see that is what happened, is what occurred, really occurred, what was projected to occur. So we've got some good data there with the environmental impact statement that was done along with our data and our history of operating there. So we feel we can mine this area, give us a little bit of time with very little impact or noticeability the neighbors. We can certainly, obviously we'll go to the, show this settlement, but it's pretty clear from the exhibits and stuff on the areas. And all we're talking about is moving away from the chain of seas.
So I think at this point, I know we definitely want to send this out to the engineer to take a look at it so we can get a better sense of it. I know we've got tons of questions. And so in the meantime, we're also going to look at the agreement to get a better sense of it, just to make sure, because we wouldn't want to authorize a zone change that would go against the agreement. So what I'd like to do, and if there's any conversation about this, I'd like to just table this for now to reconsider once we've done a little bit more due diligence, so we kind of know what next steps are. Because I want to make sure that whenever we send to the planning board, we've got all our questions answered at that point, and we know about the agreement. That way, if we end up referring this to the planning board, they know exactly what they've got, the agreement or not, or whatever it ends up being. They're really just more concerned about the zone change itself. So,
Could I ask a quick question before I do that? What's the difference between the FEIS and the DEIS then?
One's a draft environmental impact.
Oh, one's a draft and one's
statement,
final.
One's a final.
Great. Do we have the draft from 2003 before
Well, we
the
should
final?
have the final.
Right, but I know that Elaine was looking for the draft.
She's interested in seeing the evolution of
Yeah.
how that progressed, not just what it was and what the conclusion
So I just
was.
want to make sure if that's something.
I
we-
assume it's here somewhere,
Okay.
but it might be,
I've got boxes.
it might be
Okay.
easier for him to.
Can you sort through it and not just drop off the whole box? You would appreciate that.
So what I'll do is I'll send you an email to kind of wrap up after this. We'll make sure we get those environmental impact statements.
Because the engineer's going to want to see that.
Exactly. So we're going to do our due diligence, and for right now, is that everyone on board with that?
One, do you guys have like the color, your the settlement in like with the colored exhibits and things? Do you know? I mean, I have multiple copies.
It would be great to get some better copies than we have.
Excuse me?
It would be great to get some better copies than what we currently
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, no, I have like colored ones.
Yeah.
You can get that to us.
That are
Yeah.
easy to read.
I have, I did speak with Alita today,
Alita.
and who's the attorney for consultant, because she asked me about what we were going to consider tonight. And I have sent her the settlement, so she's got that, but you're probably better off sending her yours because it's a much better copy.
Yeah, like you can see I'm lacking in technology, but we gotta get to,
We have a spiffy copier thing here that we can.
okay.
Yeah,
Well, I
we'll
can,
get
I
everything.
can certainly get them, but like I said, certainly the colored
Yeah.
ones that they refer to is much easier to read than
Yeah.
trying to,
Yeah.
you know,
And then-
so I might have extra ones in color and everything.
Well, we can make copies of it.
Okay.
Yeah, we can make the colored copies.
All the
You do
exhibits.
Yeah,
Do you have, do you have access to a copier too? Color copies?
That's not, I can get, I'll make.
Yeah, we'll get what we need to
I think we
everybody.
can work out the logistics of making
Everyone
a
gets
color
a
copy.
copy.
It's gonna be quite
I
difficult.
know.
It's a big fan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anything else?
No, we'll be in touch though.
Thank you, thanks for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you very much.
You guys are so funny sometimes.
All right, so the next up is, we have a local law to create the mixed-use overlay district. So I know we've got some good feedback from Counselor Denton on this. She had a recommendation that rather than doing an overlay district, we go back and tidy up the current zones we have on the books to allow for this. Does anybody want to?
Highlight what she said, or,
What's that?
yeah, do you want me to? Should we talk
Yeah, if you
more
want to
about
share that, but if anybody else has, this is a time for us to have a conversation
Thank you
about
for
it.
coming.
Just overall, I want to reiterate what we said last time, which is that I think we're all pretty excited about the idea of a project evolving with a space that's built evolving with the needs of the community. So
Yeah.
if we're sitting shoulder to shoulder on this, it would be good to not create something new when we could also evolve our code, make something better.
Every time, our whole audience, there's everyone left us. We got a couple on Zoom, but every time we've talked about an overlay district, Elaine is like, how about we just change the code? Maybe we should just
Well,
start with that.
And I think the reason I think an overlay district makes a lot of sense is because this notion of mixed use development, at least locally, it's still kind of conceptual. We don't, we have some good examples of it. And I think knowing that with comprehensive plan coming, we're going to be spending a significant amount of resources to probably overhaul the zoning pretty substantially. I think this is a good, the overlay district provides kind of a stepping stone to that. Because the two scenarios you have is one, adjust the current zoning, and then you would zone any proposed mixed use development with one of those zones, or it would be allowed because it's already in the zone. And that would also mean that there would be however many properties that would have the potential to go from one type of use right now to, whatever, I think even 3-story buildings with residences in them and street front, shops and things like that. Whereas an overlay district we would be able to set up the ideals of what an overlay district would be, then apply it to other zones with modifying whatever uses. But we would also be able to have a conversation with anybody who is looking to go towards mixed use, because this is something new and we might, if we just change a zone and there's 6 properties with that zone that say, okay, well, now it's an allowed use, so I'm going to go through it and go to site plan. I do think it would be nice to, as we are developing, a new sense of zoning, to be able to have those conversations with applicants so that, this, I think, would give us a little bit more flexibility in doing it. But that's.
Well, the thing that's attractive is the time arc. You're saying if, goes away, the overlay goes away if the ownership changes, correct? It's there forever.
That's correct.
Oh, in that
It's a
case,
zone change.
then
It's a-
why,
I mean,
okay,
it's there forever until you change it again, but
why don't, okay.
Yeah.
I have to say that because we know mixed use works in centers of cities like Syracuse.
Mhm.
It would be interesting to hear SACA and
So
planning boards views and other.
I have some feedback from Dan
That'd be great.
at SACWA that I can share with everybody.
That would be awesome.
And that was kind of where we started, was reaching out to them to see if they had an example. And they had sent us some examples. I know Tim looked at a couple different ones to kind of put this proposal together. But I think at this point, I think we need to have a larger conversation about overlay versus changing the
Yeah.
zones. But I think at the same time, we can, whatever we do, a lot of this language would end up in those other zones if we go that direction. So taking some time to really understand this zone is laid out. It addresses a lot of the conversations we had at the last workshop about how to do mixed use and that kind of transitionary district. And I think in general, we've got one developer who is essentially, we're looking at creating this to meet those needs of what they're looking for. And, as we saw, we have a zone change that could happen that would also be applicable for this. And this is something that might make it a little easier to kind of allow that development to happen now without having to wait for an overhaul to the zones.
Okay, so we're worried that they won't do this project if we don't help.
Well, I their business decision is not our problem, but, but I would like to suggest that we consider this by way of like a pilot for a new way of zoning because our full zoning redesign will not happen right away. And we could see the pros, because I think one of the things I want to caution us is that this site is not like a city street.
Right. It's setback.
And it's setback. It has pedestrian ability, but there's no sidewalk, there's no streetscape.
There's no
there's
infrastructure.
It's not like that. So this is not really a model for what mixed use, what we were talking about going up Burdick Street or something where you have shops downstairs and apartments, it's not that. So your division of mixed use and this property is not really the same. And I think what we want to do is permit this property to adapt to the changing business environment, not to be preventing them from being successful. And at the same time, it's multiple lots, just coincidentally. So some of the things, if we just were to stick with how we've historically done zoning, there'd be parking requirements, there'd be setback requirements, and this particular property doesn't fit any of that. And so I think we need to be cautious about revamping the RM zone to permit all these weird
Difference.
it would be like a handful of zoning board of appeals requests to accommodate to this particular site.
That was my question to Elaine when I spoke with her on the phone yesterday, is how many zones across the town would this then affect if we were to amend the zone to modernize it? Because if we're gonna do this ultimately anyway, I think we can piecemeal the zoning. I don't think it needs to be this one big hulking thing that we do. If we know that's the direction we want to head, we don't always have to wait for the comprehensive plan to check that box and then say, okay, now we can do this. But if it's not going to make sense across the broader zones that don't fit the same criteria but have the same zone, then I think the spot zone is not a great solution. So that was my point. Elaine seemed to think that it would be helpful to all the zones. I won't speak for her, but that was my understanding. So that's if it doesn't fit, as Sarah's saying, then I think this makes a ton of sense, but I'm just not
She
sure.
was saying change RM and RT parking, add apartments for residential use as a permitted use, et cetera, et cetera.
Because we don't need, a lot of the old way of zoning and developing was to require inordinate, look at town center, all those that parking lot is there because of us. We made them put those spots there and it's a sea of parking. So it's just not as necessary as it had thought to be. So I think we'll be reevaluating this anyway. If it makes sense to change the zone, let's change the zone. I don't think we need a Band-Aid for another 18 months until the comprehensive plan is
So
done.
just for a point of reference, the RM area is Genesee Street from Fayetteville Village to Dewey. So those would be the properties that would be impacted if we changed RM.
I think that makes sense.
Well, that makes sense for them. I'm thinking about the Palmer homestead, all those.
It's already a property.
Yeah,
There's more RM than
Yeah,
just
there's
that.
more.
But-
RM is on unusual
Yeah,
nature.
yes, that's correct.
So I would be interested in the concept of thinking about the mixed use overlay as a pilot, not as a moment in time while we're flying the plane while we're building it, but for these projects, but also to learn.
But the advantage of an overlay district is that it doesn't exist until this town board makes a decision that it's going to place it over a already zoned parcel. So on a case-by-case basis, you can use the overlay district in a situation like the one we're talking about on right? Because that really did generate this conversation, is the
yeah.
fact that there are these offices that they look residential and they have offices on the first floor and second floor, and they're like, well, you know what? People aren't going to offices anymore, so
Yeah, I mean,
we
just say
can't,
downtown,
we can't.
or like, yeah.
So let's see if we can do something to make this more advantageous so that we don't have to abandon them, right? We don't have to leave them vacant. So what if we put apartments on the second floor and offices on the first floor? It's very unique to that situation. We do not have a zone in this town that really fits that nicely. So this is the attempt to address that specific concern.
I also think that if one of the same zone came to us and it was on East Genesee Street, and then they had a new and different thing that didn't quite fit the zone, but we liked, then we're going back and changing the zone again and again and again to try to make it fit all these different unique needs for different parcels.
But this overlay district does give the planning board a lot of flexibility in the future to look at those kinds of situations, so you don't have to make those
Yeah.
changes.
Well,
So,
and I think it's important to remember that because we would be creating an overlay district rather than changing current zones, any request for this overlay district would come to us, and we would be able to have a conversation with the applicant
Yeah.
to better understand why you're doing this, why are you interested in this?
Because
type
then
of thing?
we didn't want it on Unders Road, we could say, no,
Right, yeah,
yeah,
and if we
because-
just change the underlying zone, we don't have that option.
yeah, it just would go to the planning board and we would have no oversight.
correct.
I mean, it would just-
Sounds like we're telling Twin Shores that we want to change their proposal to include.
Well, no, if there's an overlay district available
Yeah.
at any point in time in the future, they could say, oh, it makes business sense to put mixed use on Burdick Street. They could come back and say, rather than asking for the RM district.
And Core could do it with Town Center.
Exactly.
And one of the things that I've always wondered since before I ever held this position was why the towns and villages aren't more conversational with the developers. And the comprehensive plan seems to have been the answer to that. Like, we can expressly say, this is the type of development we want to see in our town. Bring these projects to us. And so I'd be happy to have a conversation with the developers of the Fiat property to say, this is what we want to see. Come to us with proposals like this, because this is what we want to see. And the overlay district would then allow us to actually build what we
It's a much more
want.
flexible tool in my mind than changing floor zones.
I mean, Elaine's not here.
Yeah, so let's,
And
I
I
think,
know she'd be like
Yeah.
pushing back. I
so
know she would.
let's leave it there. We'll bring this up again in the future. We'll table it for now. But let's try and get as many questions as possible, kind of shooting around the email so that we can,
If we were to move forward with this, what would the next step be? Would we refer it to someone else?
schedule, believe it's schedule.
Do we have to take it to some?
Yeah, it has to go to
Sakwa.
SACWA, yeah, so we definitely have to go to SACWA.
You could send it to the planning
you could
board
send it
for
to the planning board.
recommendation.
Do we
Whatever.
want to take that step to send it to the planning board? just to get
I
the
don't
ball
think so
rolling?
yet, because I just don't think we've had enough conversation.
We've been
I
tweaking
think
it.
we're
They're
still at this,
tweaking it.
changing the zones versus overlay. And so once we've come to that decision, we can work on the meat of it a little bit better. And then once we've got something. So I think even if we just table it for one meeting, we'll be able to come back and then make those recommendations.
Do
That-
we don't need to get SOC, but we don't need a motion for that, do we? Okay.
Well,
So we
we
can be
usually
conversant.
do that, but we
can't- They would have to act on our
Yeah,
draft
we don't
zone.
we don't have a
Okay.
local law to send them at this
Yeah.
point.
All right, so I think I'm interested to see how this conversation evolves, and I'm really interested to hear feedback from SOC, but so hopefully we can make that
Yeah.
move at our next meeting.
Okay. So we will table that for now. So, okay. Next up, we have an opera agreement.
Any chance you could skip down to number 10, and then I'll get out of your hair.
Well, we like having you here.
Sure. So Sarah, item number 10.
So we like residents who take initiative.
Who doesn't want to sit
We
at
try
the
to
table?
be amenable to polite requests from the audience, so sounds good to me. Yeah, very, yeah.
So, as you're probably aware, the Sky Ridge Water District has had some challenges with their water system. They've evaluated a number of different things that might solve their problems. And one of the things that, so number 10, there's two parts of it. One is just a sort of explanation of where we've been at on the 2-track system. One is to expand or upgrade their existing system and wells, and the other is to work in the direction of public water so that the risk to their wells is a moot point. So those are 2 tracks that we're continuing to march down both. On the track of preserving their wells, I don't know if you're familiar, but they use a state grant cycle that comes up every July, and there's money available for something called source water protection, which is designed to protect the recharge area for well water so that the water can have enough water pressure to keep the development going. Currently, the water is safe and effective, but it is in short supply. So when it's a very sort of drought weather, it goes low. It's very, it just makes it through the day before it runs out of water and has to refill again. So our goal is to try to make sure that that doesn't get any worse. So this source water protection is under the Water Quality Improvement Program, and it provides for acquiring land that is above where the water is to make sure that it is protected from contaminants or other people's wells that would then draw the water away and make it not available to Skyridge. So that was the focus, and the grant is due Friday, and that's why. You have a question?
Would you like to come up to the podium?
Yeah, we can.
Just so we can
Yeah,
hear
just so that anybody who's watching from home can get you near you.
So the first piece of this is to ensure that it's protected.
Mhm.
It's protected.
Yes.
Where does it go from there? And where is it? I guess, where's the?
So the land, the well is actually at the part of Horseshoe Lane that's the closest to South Springs. And the land across the street and around Palmer Gulf would be the land that is impacted by the proposal. And it's basically fields now, and we just want it to stay fields.
Across the street from South Springs. Fortunately.
Yeah. So that's where the land is. It's an application. We don't know that the state will agree to it, but that's the direction.
But there's a well down at Gulf Road. too.
Yes, that's their secondary well. And the well on Gulf Road is more protected because of the cliff than the well that they actually use for their water on a daily basis. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Is this a matching grant of any kind?
Yes, there's a 25% match, which will be assigned to the water district.
Okay, great.
So the cost of the land,
The state will pay for 75% of the cost of the land, and the water district will pay for the 25%.
got it.
And this is essentially, the justification of using that money is to make sure that that water is there for the future, which means that the water district would bear that cost and not the town.
Yeah.
That's what you're.
So that property would have to be purchased.
Yes.
You're talking about
Yes.
the state would pay 75%.
We don't have to, we could buy a conservation easement, which is less expensive, or purchase it outright.
Water district is-
Yeah,
Yes.
another 25%.
Any idea of what?
The grant is for $550,000. The resolution was for up to 550.
Yeah, it was
We
like
don't expect
500.
it would cost that much, but it's up to them.
Any other questions?
We need a motion to authorize you to. Sorry,
So there's a resolution that I prepared for tonight's meeting that you can just approve.
So it's number 10.1. So I will make a motion to approve the resolution to apply for Water Quality Improvement Program fund.
William can do it. I've done it.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So we have a letter from Aqua to add 3 hydrants to Fremont Road.
I make a motion to approve 3 hydrants on Fremont Road with the option 1 payment.
With the,
Option 1 payment.
okay,
So is it a water district there? Is the town absorbing it?
So,
It's a consolidated water district.
We do have one there.
yeah, and so doesn't look like we would have the money to do the outright payment.
Okay.
And I think this is generally the normal practice is to just, do it
Pay as you
over
go.
30 years. Yeah.
you get it on layaway.
Yeah.
And it did appear to be the cheaper option.
Well, I think the 222 that's in there would be adjusted over 30 years, but
Oh,
we would absorb that cost understanding, but I think we just don't have, the total would be close to $14,000. And I just don't think we have that budgeted. So just doing it over 30 years spreads that cost over 30 years. Plus it spreads it
Also
over.
spreads it over the users.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's a little bit more equitable. And this is, normally hydrants are pretty straightforward procedure. They say they're adding a hydrant. It's 76, 74 a year. We say yes. So we do have a motion, needs a second.
I'll second.
Any other questions or comments, concerns, anything like that?
Answer the one that I had.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Okay, next up is the Onondaga County Planning Board Agreement. So this is, I met with the mayors and SACPA and the rest of the supervisors. Basically, everyone I've talked to is a major fan of this. Our planning board is happy with this. It simply reduces the number of things that have to be sent to Onondaga County. Which,
I'm sure they're definitely in favor of it.
yeah, so they've taken over like a new administrative model where certain things were handled administratively, which has streamlined things. This is in continuation of that. It's very clear the county planning plans on a lot of development, so they're trying to streamline things. There were some other municipalities that had some like major breakthroughs with this that have changed the way they do it. For us, this is going to save a whole lot of time, and especially too, looking at how we gave special permits to the planning board. This is all in the goal of optimizing that, so that when developers come to the town, ideally it's a few stops and then they can get moving. And like I said, our planning board did give us a thumbs up.
Make a motion to approve.
Let's
The
say supervisor to sign or we have to.
Yeah, to sign the agreement.
motion to approve the supervisor to sign the agreement from Onondaga County Planning Board.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. That's our planning board, very happy. And the ZBA too. And it's a pretty big deal. for
And the
us.
planning development office.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Okay. So next up, we have the RFP for the construction of a floating kayak dock at Poolsbrook Lakes.
So as previously discussed, we have received funding for a kayak floating dock. Thanks to the town manager, we have an RFP ready to go out. So you saw it's still in color, but it will be straightened out and then distributed. There we have a process for bidding that goes through Avalon, and Town Clerk Weber made a button on the website so that you can direct people to the site at Avalon. So if they come here to look for it, they can get there. So that would be the process, and then we have to go in the newspaper to say that it's available.
I'd like to make a motion to issue the RFP for the kayak floating dock for Poolsbrook.
There's,
Do you want to talk about
well, there's edits sitting here, so.
as
As edited.
edited?
I'll second.
Oh, wait a second. I made the changes yesterday morning. I sent it to Alice, and I think she has the final copy. You're talking about
The one on the agenda says table of contents needs to be revised based on edits.
oh, for the RFP.
Yeah, so we can do the resolution.
Yes, you can do the
and then
resolution.
finalize
We'll fix the
RFP.
Don't
RFP.
send out an RFP that isn't done, but as we.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
You're
But,
right.
yeah.
You're
And
right.
it won't have the teal colors in it, right?
So we can, so Heather could just make a motion.
Yeah, we've got.
As I did, and then so we can discuss them. then.
So I do want to ask though,
Hmm?
do we have we just send it to Avalon and they send it out, like, who do we contact
We
to
have-
build a
we-
floating dock?
Thanks to our affiliation with Madison County Planning Board and Old Erie Canal, working with
They're amazing.
we have a number of kayak dock vendors available to us. did you know such things were there?
You learn something new every day here.
Accessible ones too.
Yes, I mean, this is accessible to individuals with mobility.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's
What
great.
a cool thing to have in the community.
And it's in partnership with state parks, who are very enthusiastic and are doing some of the work for the matching work they're doing, not us. It's a great partnership.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, all in favor? Okay, opposed? Carries.
So everything needs to edit.
What's that?
Who does the editing to the RFP?
Dan will do it.
Will you correct my name too, please? First and last.
Did I say your name?
Yes.
No worries. We'll fix-
I don't know.
We're only 7 months in. We'll
Hey,
get
at least your name is it, Crystal, what was my last name?
you.
As long as people can read it on the ballot.
This is just really exciting.
can't remember.
As an individual.
I know, it's
Good
good
friend,
stuff.
I
good
just
friend
hope you
coworker
notice
of mine who was recently
in
in
every
the
resolution.
amputee.
And is
Who's
it?
a lifetime
I
kayaker.
appreciate that.
And this is gonna be an absolute destination. It's fantastic.
It's
I
great.
do know that one.
For like economic development perspective, like this is the type of thing that if
Brings people to
Tourism,
town.
that we could be promoting if we had a vehicle to do so.
Well, what's so cool is that they sent, the Old Area Canal Working Group sent their final draft of their study. And everything, if you want to learn more about the whole big project they're a part of, it's tourthetowpath.com.
Mhm.
I asked the same question, .com or .org last time, I remember. But I think what's so great is that lots of other committees have been doing a lot of work. And this is an example of not being in the silos. They already looked and said, here, this is a great project. We just need your partnership and some of your labor on this.
It is tourthetowpath.com.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And
Tour the tour.
and that's what we want to do. So this is a general
Sure.
call to people. If you're
Okay.
doing work on things and you feel like the town should be involved, get in touch.
And Tour the Towpath this weekend is having their biking event that starts from the Chittenango Canal Museum, and would encourage everybody to bike from here to Chittenango or back. Okay.
More information on their website. Tourthetowpath.com.
So next up, we've got the tree removal bid results.
First of all, I think
Come on down.
Oh, yeah, do you mind coming to the podium? So everybody can hear.
Just so I don't have
Jump
to
over,
turn. I
but
can't,
yeah.
I can't
Thank
be,
you, Rob.
like, I'm.
We've had
old.
feedback
Can't
that
be-
it's hard to hear out.
Yeah, it's
from the-
hard, yeah.
First of all, I'd like to thank our town manager and actually Tim and I believe the rest of the crew was involved in this too. So
Thanks.
we took a template and basically created this contract. So it did take a lot more than what I think we originally expected, but ultimately I think it fit the town of Manlius, and there is no one fit. You know what I mean? So anyway, in the past we had a company working with us, who worked with our tree commission, who goes with the highway superintendent twice a year, with a program basically built in for our tree removal systems. As far as what trees can take it down, it's usually done a year in advance. We meet with our residents, let them know what we're gonna do. So again, that was all kind of part of putting this plan together. So, but we did have actually 2 bidders for this bid spec that we put out. We put the bid out on the 6th, I think we did. And then actually we did it on the 21st. So anyway, I expected actually to have a couple more just from some of the conversations that we had with Sarah and John, people that are hired. But I think after they looked at what we're proposing, what we were looking for, we were down to 2 really reputable. So anyway, we did have 2 bidders, Bartlett, both are non-inclusives. We bid it as a bucket truck with 2 men, with the town's help and without the town's help. So in other words, if we had a takedown, the town typically would be with them, if they're going to be out trimming, they'd be able to go with crews on the ground. So Bartlett actually did bid the same for both of those at $22.08. And we also did an emergency bid. Bartlett did a $308 per hour with the town's help. We did $308 per hour without the town's help. So the other company, Walker Tree Service, they also have non-inclusive. They were $3,080 with the town's help. And they were also $3,000 without the town's help. So they kind of left theirs basically the same, whether we helped them or not.
And also with their emergencies, they put it as with the town's help at $1,800 hour, $2,800 without the town's help. So the numbers really, and that's for the 3 hour minimum. They put a 3 hour minimum clause in theirs, where Bartlett did not. You never know. Sometimes it takes you half an hour to take care of the tree. Sometimes it'll be 3 hours. So I guess at this point, I'd like to make the recommendation that we do accept the bid from Bartlett Tree Service. It was a continuation of the rest of this year to January 1 with an option, as long as they keep the pricing basically the same, for another option of 2-year contract. So on a 1-year basis, so you're reviewing that each year for the next 2 years. So
Bartlett, they go to the tree commission meetings. Yeah.
they do.
Yeah.
That was part of our spec actually. We made sure that they would still, whoever the tree company would be involved with our transmission. Working group still attending those meetings, and that was kind of part of that. So anyway, I just need a motion to accept the bid and call the tree continue.
We're looking at the tree person. May I make a motion to accept the bid that Bartlett put in for tree removal?
Any conversation? We'll say, seems like a fair price compared to the
Yeah,
others.
great price.
And I was gonna say, I think it's the having to participate in the tree commission that maybe thinned out the
It may have.
herd of applicants. Oh, we'll take down trees. but I'm
That
not
sounds
going to-
riveting.
With the extra meetings, how we want.
Yeah.
They're, yep.
Right,
All
I love the
right,
tree commission.
you have
They're amazing.
we're
to,
good. All in favor?
yeah.
Right? Opposed? Carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for the work on that. I know it was quite a bear to put that spec together. Okay, next up is the supervisor's monthly report for June 2022.
I make a motion to approve the supervisor's report.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries. Okay, next up, this is, I guess, my item, is the party in the plaza registration fee. So this is just gonna authorize us to get a table at the next party in the plaza in August. And I think the plan there is to have a lot of the comprehensive plan stuff there. Probably we'll print out some newsletters, make sure that's out there. And I think the big thing will be asking people to sign up for emails and whatnot, so they can stay in the loop. And I believe that's a $25 fee, if I remember correctly.
Never have to pay the village.
And we talked to them and they have asked us to register for the August part of the plaza.
I believe it's actually,
Without paying. I've registered us without paying before. I've spoken with at the chamber, I think. It's the name.
yeah, I think it's actually the chamber, not the
It's the
village.
chamber that does it, so, I mean, I would think it's okay
It's
to
support the
pay,
chamber.
yeah,
You want, okay.
yeah,
Well,
no, I
if we-
appreciate that though. Thank you for trying to save the taxpayers money.
Do we want to double check and just make sure that we're not paying for something that they're willing to give us?
Are we members or we're not members, right? Because we're a municipality. So I
Well-
think because we're not official
Would be-
members.
So how about this? If we're comfortable authorizing the $25,
Yeah.
if it's available, that we don't have to pay.
Mhm.
And I will say this does imply some costs for table tent, some supplies to table in specific, but that won't be really anything. too
Yeah,
much.
under $200.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so
I'll make a motion to authorize the supervisor to pay a $25 fee for party in the plaza and those three of them.
all in favor?
Parks and Rec.
Aye. Opposed? Carries. Thank you.
Like
And
$25.
then the last item under me is the request for proposal for our town attorney
Well, this
services.
is awkward.
No, there's one item on page 3, there's a little typo, it references a professional service contract with an engineering firm.
Okay.
So we wanted
Thank you
to
for fixing
So we may or may not have used this before.
it.
Any questions on that?
So, yeah, can you take care of
Any
I made
questions?
enough motions tonight, you guys can make it.
Or questions or concerns?
Otherwise, I'd like to make a motion for this.
Well, before we do it, we can just explain that it's just part of our process to best practices to apply every 3.
I think we had a conversation about 3. We might be extending that a little bit further. just because
There's so much work.
Well, and it's a lot of change too. If we
Yeah.
do go with somebody else, it's a pretty significant process. So,
Yeah,
but we
But regularly,
Yeah.
to review and just make sure we're giving the taxpayers the best.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's strongly recommended by the attorney.
It's strongly recommended by the attorney, but Thank you.
I think William was making.
I'd like to make a motion for the supervisor to release the RFP for the town's attorney services as edited by the town manager.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
So we would love to keep yours.
Okay, next up, minutes and abstract. Sarah?
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of July 13th.
I'll second.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
No,
So
but no
you
one
will
is
not-
seconding
you will
it.
not second
I'll abstain.
I'll second.
I'm like sitting here, I'm like,
Okay,
So you'll abstain.
yeah, I'm abstaining.
all in favor? All right, opposed, abstained? Motion carries.
You guys got a second faster.
This abstract was a quick question. I just looked over just today. It's a lot of just payments for summer work folks, right? That's the
I'll
bulk.
tell you, as
I'm like,
I
who are
just,
all these people?
I just signed those checks. It's quite a number of employees, which, what's that?
Oh,
Well, the winners this time was the trash
Yeah.
refuse contract, followed by employee benefits when they both hit at the same time. It's been a good month. And that rent payment happened too, so it's just there's a lot of
It
things
was a
like
big
that, but I did circle the rec department.
yeah. I just wanted to say congratulations to, I know what it's like to work in these programs and it's been hot different days and they've just done so well and they just had the musical. So kudos to the rec team because this is their time to shine and they do.
They really
stuff.
know.
And
They really are shiny.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did some nice stuff. And they did a senior trip too, so we
Yeah.
did a number of
Yeah.
them. So I would like to make a motion to approve abstract number 14 in the amount of $661,072.12.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries. Okay. Is there any other business to be discussed? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Who's gonna second it?
I'll second.
All in favor?
You're allowed to say
Aye.
that, Melissa.
Opposed?
It's really funny.
Okay.
All right, you guys.
I predicted exactly 7:30.
Yeah.